Hello, friends. Today we unravel the unsettling truth about friendship and deception. This story centers on Emily and Claire, two inseparable friends whose bond seems unbreakable. But beneath the laughter and warmth lies a chilling reality, one that raises questions about trust and hidden motives. Watch closely. Emily sat at the corner table of their favorite cafe, sunlight filtering through the window, casting a warm glow over their laughter. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweet scent of pastries, wrapping them in a comfortable cocoon. Claire was animatedly recounting a funny mishap from a recent hiking trip, her eyes sparkling with mischief. Emily leaned in, her heart swelling with affection. This was what friendship felt like. Unguarded, vibrant, alive. And just as I was about to scale that ridiculous cliff, I slipped and landed right in a pile of mud. Claire burst into laughter, and Emily joined her, the sound echoing like music. But amid the joviality, a flicker of something unnameable passed through Emily's mind. It was just a moment, a shadow darting across her thoughts. Claire's stories were often larger than life, filled with dramatic twists and turns. Yet, Emily brushed it aside, focusing instead on the warmth radiating from their banter. She wanted to believe in the magic of their bond, to trust that each shared story was woven with truth. As Claire sipped her coffee, Emily studied her friend. Claire had always been the life of the party, effortlessly charming everyone around her. But there was a subtle discomfort that seeped into Emily's heart, a whisper of doubt that dared to question the narrative. Why did Claire always seem to know just a bit too much about everyone else's lives? She was the glue that held their diverse group together. Yet sometimes, when her laughter echoed a little too loudly, Emily felt a dissonance, like a note played out of tune. Remember that time we all got caught in the rain during that picnic? Claire continued, her voice lilting with nostalgia. Emily nodded, her smile unwavering, but the memory propelled her deeper into thought. That day had been spontaneous, full of laughter and joy. But it had also felt slightly staged, as if Claire had orchestrated the entire event to bring them closer. Yeah, it was like a scene from a movie, Emily replied, forcing her smile to stay intact. Inside, a tide of uncertainty began to swell. The more she reveled in their friendship, the more she sensed the threads of something darker weaving through the fabric of their interactions. By the way, Claire said, her tone shifting slightly, I heard that Mark is planning to throw a surprise party for Sarah's birthday. Isn't that sweet? Emily's heart sank at the mention of Mark. He had always been the skeptic of their group, the one who occasionally glanced at Claire with a hint of suspicion. Really? I hope he doesn't forget the cake this time, she replied, by instinct holding back the sharpness of her thoughts. As they finished their coffees, Emily felt a tightening in her chest. The laughter faded, replaced by an undercurrent of anxiety. It was a strange juxtaposition, the warmth of their friendship enveloping her. Yet there lingered a nagging question that refused to dissipate. Could she truly rely on Claire? Was there a mask hiding the truth behind those expressive eyes? Hey, are you okay? Claire's voice cut through Emily's reverie, concern etching her features. Yeah, I'm fine, Emily replied too quickly, dismissing the uneasiness swirling within her. But as they got up to leave, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the cafe window. A fleeting image of a woman wearing a smile, yet staring back at her with eyes clouded by doubt. As they stepped into the bustling street, the warmth of the sun clashed with an inexplicable chill that crawled down her spine. The world around her felt vibrant and alive. Yet she couldn't shake the feeling that something was off kilter. With every step, the question hung in the air, heavy and unyielding. Could she trust those closest to her? Or were they all simply wearing masks? Emily sat at the corner table of their favorite cafe, the hum of conversation swirling around her like a warm embrace. The scent of freshly brewed coffee mingled with the sweetness of pastries, creating an atmosphere that had always felt safe, familiar. Claire animatedly recounted her latest escapade, her laughter ringing out like a bell. But as Emily leaned in, a nagging feeling began to tug at her gut, an itch she couldn't quite scratch. And then I told him, "You can't just walk away from your responsibilities," Claire exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. Emily smiled, but her mind drifted. The story felt familiar. The same tale had unfolded in a slightly different version just a week ago. She brushed it aside, attributing it to the quirks of Claire's vibrant storytelling. Yet, as Claire continued, the inconsistencies began to pile up, like a stack of unwashed dishes at the sink. Wait, wasn't it the rooftop bar last time? Emily hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. Claire paused, her smile faltering for a brief moment, but then she waved it away with a flick of her wrist. "Oh, you know how it is. Details get mixed up." "But the point is, I really stood my ground," Claire replied, her tone light. But Emily caught a flicker of something in her eyes, a momentary glint that felt more like a mask than a window. The warmth of the cafe felt suddenly stifling. She took a sip of her coffee, trying to ground herself in the familiar taste, but it was bitter, like the feeling creeping into her thoughts. Emily's heart raced as she recalled the countless times she had listened, wrapped in attention, convinced by Claire's charm. Had she been blind all this time? As the afternoon sun cast a golden glow through the windows, illuminating the faces of her friends, Emily felt the warmth dissipate, replaced by an unsettling chill. She studied Claire closely, trying to reconcile the vibrant person before her with the doubts swirling in her mind. The laughter sounded hollow. The shared glances felt strained. "Are you sure you're okay?" Sarah, sitting across from her, asked gently, her brow furrowing slightly. Emily forced a smile, grateful for the concern but too tangled in her thoughts to respond. "Of course, just thinking," she replied, her voice wavering. What was she even thinking? The flicker of doubt felt trivial, but it ignited a fear she hadn't expected. Could she really ignore the subtle signs? What if the person she trusted most was hiding behind a facade? The thought settled heavily in her chest, a weight she couldn't shake off. Claire's stories felt like a mask, concealing truths Emily wasn't sure she wanted to see. "Let's just enjoy the moment, right?" Claire chimed in, her laughter a little too bright, too forced. Emily nodded, but deep inside, the question hung in the air, unasked yet palpable. Could she continue to trust when the smallest cracks threatened to shatter her perception of reality? As the conversation swirled around her, Emily felt the warmth of their friendship flicker like a flame in the wind. She wanted to believe, to cling to the comfort of their bond, but the cracks were beginning to show, and with it, so too was her confidence. The mask Claire wore seemed both alluring and terrifying, and for the first time, the laughter felt like a warning. Emily sat at her kitchen table, the late afternoon sun streaming through the window, illuminating the scattered papers and photographs that now covered its surface. Each item felt like a shard of glass, reflecting the doubt that had crept into her mind over the past few weeks. Claire's laughter echoed in her ears, a haunting melody that now sounded discordant, filled with hidden notes of betrayal. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to silence the noise. But the memory was relentless. It began with a seemingly innocuous comment from Mark, their mutual friend. during one of their casual get-togethers. You know, I've always wondered why Claire never talks about her family. The offhand remark had struck Emily like a bolt of lightning, igniting a fire of curiosity mixed with unease. She had brushed it off at the time, but the ember had smoldered, growing into an insatiable need for answers. And now, with her heart hammering in her chest, she was piecing together the fragments of Claire's story that no longer added up. The first clue was a photo, one she had taken at Claire's birthday dinner just a month ago. In that picture, Claire wore a smile that was as radiant as the candles flickering behind her. Emily had loved that moment, capturing her friend in blissful happiness. But as Emily stared at it now, she felt an unsettling dissonance. Claire had spoken of her family in such detail that night, yet her aunt never appeared in any of the photos she shared. It was a trivial detail, perhaps, but in the growing tapestry of uncertainty, it felt monumental. Searching for the truth felt like opening a door to a room filled with shadows. Emily's hands trembled as she navigated through her phone, her thumb hesitating over Claire's social media profile. The carefully curated images, the glowing comments from friends, all crafted to project an image of perfect authenticity. But underneath, what lay? With each new scroll, Emily's heart raced, the tension coiling tighter in her chest. Every detail of Claire's life seemed to be a carefully placed puzzle piece, hiding the bigger picture, the stories about her travels, her past. Just how much of it was real? The mirror on the wall across from her reflected her anxious visage, wide-eyed and tinged with disbelief. Who was this person sitting here? Her face a canvas of confusion and resolve. A sudden ding from her phone startled her, breaking the spell of her spiraling thoughts. It was a message from Sarah, her other close friend. "Hey, do you have a sec? We need to talk about Claire." The words sent a chill through Emily, solidifying her resolve. She had sensed the undercurrents of doubt in Sarah's voice lately, too. They were all feeling it, weren't they? The question hung in the air like a dark cloud. Could they confront the truth without shattering the foundation of their friendship? Rising from the table, Emily felt a sense of determination wash over her. She would not be a passive participant in this charade anymore. She would dig deeper, confront whatever lay beneath the surface, even if it meant facing the painful reality that Claire might not be who she claimed to be. She glanced once more at the mirror, its surface reflecting the fear mixed with newfound courage in her eyes. No more denial, no more blind trust. Emily was stepping into the unknown, and while the road ahead was fraught with uncertainty, it was a path she felt compelled to follow. And as she moved towards her laptop to begin her search, the question lingered. Could she face the truth without losing the very ground that she stood upon? Emily sat at her cluttered desk, her heartbeat echoing in her ears like a distant percussion. The soft glow of her laptop illuminated the chaos of her thoughts. Images of laughter shared with Claire, whispered secrets exchanged over coffee, and the warmth of their friendship. Yet, that warmth now felt like a heavy blanket suffocating her. She had spent hours piecing together the fragments of Claire's life, unraveling the tapestry of lies threaded through every interaction. The evidence lay before her like shards of broken glass, each piece reflecting a different angle of betrayal. A mismatched address here, a questionable employment history there. And now, a damning photo, Claire, smiling with a group of strangers, her face unmistakable yet surrounded by a world that didn't seem to belong to her. With trembling fingers, Emily clicked through the images, her resolve hardening with every revelation. Claire had crafted an illusion so intricate that it had ensnared not just Emily, but their entire circle. The laughter, the shared dreams, It had all been a facade, a mask shrouding the truth, which now lay exposed. The tension in the room thickened, suffocating and electric. How could someone she trusted so deeply manipulate their world so effortlessly? The dominant question loomed large. How could she wield this destructive truth to protect herself and redefine her relationships? She thought of Sarah, her friend who remained on the fence, torn between loyalty to Claire and the gnawing suspicion that something was deeply wrong. Emily imagined her face when the truth was finally unleashed, the shock mingling with the bitter taste of betrayal. Would Sarah stand with her, or would she cling to the comforting illusion? In that moment, the weight of the decision pressed down on her. Confronting Claire would shatter the fragile bonds they had built. The fear of losing friends swirled in her mind, but the thought of living in a lie was unbearable. The fractured glass of their relationships reflected not only the chaos around her, but also the turmoil within. Each shard was a reminder of the stakes. She picked up her phone, the cold metal feeling foreign in her palm. The faces of her friends danced in her mind, flickering like the erratic glint of broken glass in sunlight. Beautiful, yet dangerous. Was she prepared to expose Claire for what she truly was? The internal battle raged as her heart pulsed with determination, then recoiled in fear. With a deep breath, Emily pushed aside the doubt. She would not ignore the facts. She would not agree to a quiet acceptance of the deception that had infiltrated her life. If the bonds of friendship were to be tested, let them be shattered in the light of truth. The air felt electric, charged with the unspoken tension of a confrontation on the horizon. As she stared at her screen, her reflection stared back, eyes wide with resolve, but brimming with the pain of betrayal. The question hung heavy in the air. How could she reshape the very foundation of her trust, now so vulnerable to the jagged edges of deception? The decision loomed, and with it, the promise of pain, discovery, and, ultimately, the possibility of renewal. She was ready to act, to confront the shadows that had masked reality for too long. The time for silence had passed. The room buzzed with disbelief, the air thick with tension as Emily stood at the center of the storm she had unleashed. The soft glow of the late afternoon sunlight filtered through the window, illuminating the faces of her friends, each one a portrait of conflicting emotions. Shock and pain hung heavy in the air, palpable as the fractured glass of their trust lay shattered at their feet. "Emily, are you sure?" Sarah's voice wavered, her eyes darting between Emily and Claire, who stood defensively at the other end of the room. Claire's carefully crafted mask had cracked under the weight of Emily's revelations, and the woman who had once seemed so perfect now appeared as a stranger, a specter haunting the edges of Emily's reality. "I found proof," Emily insisted, her voice trembling but resolute. "You all have to see it. Claire isn't who she says she is." The words hung in the air, a bitter truth that cut deeper than any knife, slicing through the fragile bonds they had formed over years of trust and laughter. But as Emily spoke, she could feel the room divide. Some friends stepped closer, their expressions a mixture of concern and curiosity, while others, Mark included, crossed their arms, skepticism etched into their brows. "What proof, Em?" Mark challenged, his skepticism wavering like a candle in a gale. "You can't just accuse her without showing us something concrete." "Concrete? What more do you need?" Emily's voice rose, the desperation leaking through her facade of confidence. "I've seen the lies. Her stories don't add up. It's all a facade." Each accusation felt like another shard of glass embedded in her heart, and she could feel the anger simmering just beneath the surface, threatening to boil over into chaos. Claire, her mask slipping further, shot back. "You're just jealous, Emily. Jealous that I have a life you can't understand." The accusation felt like a slap, and Emily felt the heat of fury rise within her. How could Claire twist this around, turning the victim into the villain? "Jealous?" Emily echoed, incredulous. "I'm not the one lying. This isn't about jealousy, it's about trust." The words poured out of her, raw and anguished, as the emotional tumult within her surged like a tidal wave, threatening to overwhelm her. The room pulsated with a toxic energy, each friend's loyalty dangling precariously in the balance. Sarah's eyes glistened with tears, and she looked torn, caught between the life she had shared with Claire and the unsettling truth Emily had laid bare. "But what if you're wrong?" she whispered, her voice cracking. "What if you ruin everything for us?" "Everything is already ruined," Emily shot back, her heart pounding in her chest, a fierce determination igniting within her as she stared at Claire, who stood frozen, the weight of the truth pressing down like a heavy cloak. "You're the one who ruined it by pretending to be someone you're not." Tension stretched like a taut wire, the fracture lines deepening as friends began to choose sides. The air crackled with unspoken words, the question lingering like a specter in the room. How could they accept this shattered trust and still find a way to protect themselves amidst the betrayal? As the group began to splinter, Emily felt a chill creep over her skin, a reminder of the fractured glass symbolizing their shattered relationships. In that moment, she understood the gravity of her actions. The warmth of their community was fading, replaced by a chilling uncertainty that threatened to engulf them all. In the midst of the chaos, she realized that the friends she had once trusted completely may have been wearing masks of their own, hiding truths as painful as Claire's deception. And as the first waves of fury began to crash against the fragile shore of their friendships, Emily knew that the battle for the heart of their circle had only just begun. Emily stood in the dim light of Claire's living room, the weight of her heart pounding in her chest, the hum of the outside world muffled behind closed doors. She could feel the tension crackling in the air between them, thick and suffocating, as if the very walls were witnesses to the betrayal that had woven itself into the fabric of their friendship. "Claire, I know," Emily began, her voice steady but laced with urgency. "I know you're not who you say you are. I've seen the inconsistencies in your stories. This has to stop." Claire's expression shifted instantly, a mask slipping into place. The warmth that once radiated from her friend vanished, replaced by a chilling smile that danced on the edge of mockery. "What are you talking about, Emily? You're being ridiculous. I can't believe you'd even suggest such a thing." Her tone was light, but the edges were sharp, cutting into Emily's resolve. "Ridiculous? I've gathered the proof, photos, messages, everything. You've lived a lie and it's tearing us apart." Emily's heart raced, determination battling the rising tide of disbelief. She needed Claire to understand the gravity of the situation, to see the truth that Emily herself had only just begun to grasp. "Proof?" Claire leaned closer, her eyes narrowing, a predatory glint flickering in them. "You mean your little assumptions and half-baked theories? You don't have any real evidence, Emily. You're just trying to stir drama because you're bored with your perfect little life." The words dripped with disdain, each one a dagger aimed at Emily's chest. Emily felt a surge of fury rise within her, boiling over the shock that had initially paralyzed her. "You don't get to manipulate me like this. I know you're lying. I've trusted you, and now you're just spinning this whole web to protect yourself." "Protect myself?" Claire's voice rose, feigning innocence as she stepped back, creating distance that felt like a chasm widening between them. "Oh, Emily, you're so naive. You think you can just accuse me without any real proof? What if I turn this around on you? What if I tell everyone that you're the one making things up? You'll lose everything, your friends, your reputation. The threat hung in the air, a heavy cloak of anxiety that wrapped around Emily's throat. But she could feel a fire igniting within her. A flicker of resilience sparked from the ashes of doubt. "You don't scare me, Claire," she said, her voice more resolute than she felt. "You've played with our lives long enough. I won't let you hide behind your mask anymore." The mention of the mask sent a shiver down her spine, the potent symbol of Claire's deception looming large in the room, as if the very air was thick with the weight of hidden truths. Emily realized that the person she had trusted was merely a reflection of her own vulnerabilities, a distortion of the friendship she had cherished. How can you live with yourself, hiding behind lies? Do you really think you can keep this up forever? Claire recoiled, a flicker of something, fear or anger, crossing her features before she replaced it with that eerie smile. "You're the one who's lost, Emily. You're the one who's choosing to believe in fairy tales instead of reality." Emily felt her pulse quicken with every word, the confusion and hurt morphing into a fierce clarity. She had to face the truth. Not just about Claire, but about the very nature of their friendship. The question hung heavy in the air, unvoiced yet palpable. How could one confront deception when the deceiver refused to acknowledge their own truth? The gulf between them was no longer just about Claire's lies, but about Emily's awakening to the fragility of trust. She would not back down. The confrontation had begun, and she was determined to find the truth, even if it meant breaking the bonds that had once felt unbreakable. The late afternoon sun streamed through the tall windows of the cafe, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Emily sat at a corner table, her fingers wrapped tightly around a warm mug of chamomile tea. The chatter around her faded into a distant hum as she waited for Mark to arrive. Today felt different, electric with a tension that pricked at her skin. She had shared her discoveries with him, and now she was anxiously anticipating his response. As the door swung open, a gust of cool air swept into the room, and Mark stepped inside, his face a mixture of resolve and apprehension. He spotted Emily, and a flicker of determination crossed his features. He approached her table, the noise of the cafe fading further as they locked eyes. "Hey," he said, his voice steady but low, as if afraid that the world around them might overhear. "I've been thinking." Emily's heart raced. "You're going to say something, aren't you?" He hesitated, running a hand through his hair, his gaze drifting momentarily to the bustling cafe. The atmosphere felt charged, as if the very air was thick with unspoken words and unshed tears. "I can't just sit back and watch her manipulate us anymore. I believe you, Emily." The words struck her like a bell tolling in a quiet town, echoing louder than she anticipated. Mark was stepping into the space of conviction, crossing an invisible line that had kept him on the periphery of the conflict. "You really think Claire is lying?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, laden with disbelief and a flicker of hope. "Look at how she's acted since you brought this up. The way she deflects and twists every question. It's not just a coincidence." Mark leaned forward, his expression serious. "I've seen the way she talks about her past. Nothing adds up, and we can't ignore it any longer." Emily felt a rush of relief wash over her, but it was tinged with the weight of the moment. What if we're wrong? What if we're tearing our friendships apart over nothing? Can we afford to ignore what's right in front of us? Mark countered, passion flaring in his eyes. A mirror image of her own uncertainty reflected back at her. But now it was accompanied by an undeniable clarity. He was right. The truth required courage, and she could no longer hide behind doubt. As they spoke, the din of the cafe seemed to swell, like an audience gathering for a climactic scene. But as they shared a moment of solidarity, a shadow passed over Emily's heart. Was she prepared to face the consequences? How much of their reality had been woven from lies? The question lingered, heavy in the air, as they prepared to step into the storm brewing just outside their cafe sanctuary. As they stood to leave, the mirror of their resolve reflected the daunting path before them, one that would reveal not only the truth about Claire, but also the truths hidden within themselves. With every step, Emily felt the weight of solidarity and the burden of betrayal, knowing that the fracture that loomed ahead would redefine them all. In the soft glow of the living room, a fragile silence enveloped the group, punctuated only by the sound of Emily's racing heart. The air felt thick with disbelief, the once warm camaraderie now replaced by an icy tension that crackled in the stillness. Claire stood at the center, her expression oscillating between defiance and fear, as shards of truth fell like broken glass around them. Emily's voice trembled when she finally spoke. All of this, it was a lie. The words slipped from her lips, heavy with betrayal. Her gaze darted from Claire to the others, seeking solidarity, but only finding mirrors of confusion and hurt reflected back at her. Claire's carefully constructed facade crumbled under the weight of their collective scrutiny, revealing the hollow core beneath. Mark stood slightly apart, his brow furrowed as he processed the revelations. "You knew," he accused, turning to Sarah, who stood frozen, her eyes flickering between Emily and Claire. "You knew something was off." The accusation hung in the air, thickening the atmosphere further. "I didn't," Sarah stammered, her voice barely a whisper. I thought I could trust her too." The fracture lines in their friendship widened, each word accentuating the divide that had formed. Emily felt her pulse quicken, a mixture of anger and despair surging through her. Claire's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. But the truth was like a spotlight, illuminating every shadowy corner of her deceit. "You don't understand," she exclaimed, desperation creeping into her tone. "I did it for us. We were so perfect together. You can't just throw that away." But the bonds they had shared, once vibrant and sturdy, now felt like threads pulled taut, ready to snap. Emily's heart ached as she remembered the laughter, the late-night confessions, the shared dreams. All of it. A carefully constructed illusion. "You manipulated us, Claire. You made us believe in a friendship that wasn't real." The anger in her voice was a blade, cutting through the fogs of denial that still clung to some of them. As the reality of betrayal settled in, the group began to fracture. Like the symbols of glass now littering the floor of Emily's mind. Each friend took a step back, the physical distance echoing the emotional divide. Claire's face twisted in rage, and she lashed out, her voice rising. "You think you're better than me? You think you can just cast me aside?" Emily felt her resolve hardening. "It's not about being better. It's about being honest. We deserve that." The clarity of her words pierced through the chaos, drawing a line in the sand. Mark stepped forward, standing beside Emily, his support bolstering her determination. "We deserve the truth, Claire. You can't just erase all of us with your lies." As Claire's facade slipped further, the anguish in her eyes was palpable. But there was no sympathy left in the room, only the raw, unsettling feeling of betrayal. The question hung in the air, unanswered. How do you move forward when the very foundation of your trust has been shattered? With the weight of broken friendships pressing down on her, Emily took a deep breath, feeling the fresh sting of loss, but also a flicker of something else. Freedom. The group stood amidst the wreckage of their shared illusions, and Emily knew that while the pain of this moment would linger, it was also the beginning of something new. The pieces of their shattered trust lay before them, and despite the overwhelming sorrow, she felt a spark of resolve. They would rebuild, but this time on truths, not lies. Emily stood before the mirror, the cold glass reflecting a version of herself she scarcely recognized. The light from the window streamed in, illuminating the shadows under her eyes and the tension etched into her features. She touched the frame, running her fingers over the wood, feeling the warmth of the sun and the chill of her own heartache. Betrayal had carved deep lines into her soul, and now, standing there, she felt exposed, like a frayed thread ready to unravel. The room was silent, the kind of silence that amplified her thoughts, loud and unforgiving. She examined her face. The eyes that once sparkled with innocent trust now clouded with the weight of betrayal. A tightness mirrored in her chest as she fought against the flood of emotions threatening to overwhelm her. The truth she had unearthed about Claire felt like shards of glass embedded in her heart, each one a reminder of the friendships built on a foundation of lies. She had always believed in the sanctity of trust, that her bonds with Claire and the others were unbreakable. But now, as she traced the outline of her reflection, she felt a fierce resolve emerging within her. She would not let this betrayal define her. With each deep breath, she focused on the lessons learned, the wisdom that had ignited in the aftermath of the storm. How naive she had been to think that love and trust could exist without the shadow of caution. It was a painful revelation, yet it was one she had to embrace. Vulnerability, she realized, was not synonymous with weakness. It was a strength that could be wielded with discernment. The mirror became more than just a surface to reflect her image. It transformed into a portal of self-examination. She saw not just the hurt, but the fierce woman she was becoming, one who would tread lightly into new relationships, armed with a renewed sense of purpose. The reflection gazing back at her was not a victim, but a survivor, a woman who could take the lessons of the past and mold them into armor rather than chains. But as the weight of her realization settled in, a question lingered in the air, heavy and unyielding. How could she learn to trust again? How could she find the balance between allowing others in and protecting herself from the chaos of deception? The thought gnawed at her, a relentless reminder of her fragility. In the quiet of the room, the sunlight shifted, casting an orange glow that felt almost like a promise. Emily sat on the edge of her bed, her heart racing with a mix of fear and determination. She was no longer the naive friend blinded by loyalty. She was a woman who had tasted the bitterness of betrayal and emerged on the other side, transformed. Yet, the road ahead was unclear, fraught with uncertainty and the need for cautious steps. As she gathered her strength, the mirror in the corner caught her eye once more. It shimmered, reflecting the flicker of determination within her. She realized that it was not just a symbol of her pain, but also of her potential. In confronting her truth, however painful, she could forge a new path. It was a beginning, a cautious step towards rebuilding the pieces of her heart. And she knew that this time, she would do it with eyes wide open. Yet still, the question lingered, heavy in the air, echoing off the walls of her heart. How could she build new relationships with openness while guarding her heart from future deceit? It was a paradox that left her feeling both empowered and vulnerable, poised at the edge of a new chapter, yet unsure of how to navigate the delicate balance between trust and self-preservation. With a small, determined nod, Emily stepped away from the mirror, knowing she would face the world with caution, but also with a heart wide open to the potential for genuine connection. The lessons would not be forgotten. They would be woven into the fabric of her future, like threads of gold in a tapestry. And though the scars of betrayal would remain, they would serve as a reminder of her strength, a testament to her journey from betrayal to empowerment. As she opened the door to step into the light beyond, she felt a flicker of hope igniting within her. The path ahead was uncertain, but she was ready. The air around her buzzed with the promise of new beginnings, a delicate balance of trust awaiting her careful touch.